What's up, guys? 5-Star Paintball Tech here. I'm super excited to show you guys how to rebuild a Generation 4 Intimidator. Super lucky, too, to be working on this beautiful custom anode. It's a Ripper 3 Intimidator. We're going to walk through how to replace every single O-ring in this gun that comes from the Generation 4 rebuild kit. You could find these on 5starpbtech.com. And then also available, too, are ball detents and brand new solenoids manufactured last month in October. These are available as add-ons. We're going to start off with a walkthrough of what the kit includes from a O-ring perspective. In the next section, we'll be going through what all the tools, what tools you'll need to rebuild the marker, and then we'll go kind of bag by bag within the rebuild kit, just how to rebuild each part that the bags pertain to. So without further ado, the kit's going to include 7 bags. There's a few more O-rings in a Generation 4 Intimidator. First bag is going to be for your bolt O-rings. Bag 2 is going to be for your low pressure regulator. Bag 3 is going to be your high pressure regulator. So for this gun in particular, these actually came stock with a torpedo regulator. So I'm going to use one of my other torpedo regulator video rebuilds in lieu of that. And then we'll do a separate video that you could find in under the rebuild playlist on my YouTube for how to rebuild the 360 reg. So the bag 3 is going to be for the high pressure regulator. Bag 4 is going to be for the front block. Bag 5 is for the Barb plate that sits underneath the ram sleeve. Bag 6 is going to be for the poppet. And then bag 7 is going to be for the ram sleeve and ram. All right, guys, a quick overview on what tools you'll need to rebuild the marker. Firstly, for pretty much all of the O-rings minus the O-rings on the bolt, I do recommend getting some Dow 55. We'll be selling this on the website soon. You're going to need a standard Allen key kit, a small flathead screwdriver, and I use a, we'll also need a, I'm sorry, this is a Phillips head. You'll also need a flathead. That'll be used for getting the Schrader valve out of the low pressure regulator. An O-ring pick is going to be very helpful. Needle nose pliers, also very helpful for grabbing the piston out of the LPR. Again, like all the others, I also like using a socket wrench. This will be used for grabbing the barbs out of the marker, and then also a larger one. This is a 3/8, and for a torpedo regulator, this is really useful for getting the Schrader valve out. Once we have the regulator, the high pressure regulator rebuilt, we'll be hooking it up to this gauge to set it up to the right pressure. And then you could see right here, this is just a quick word for the wise. I'm not a huge fan of these mini gauges. The reason why is because when they're 0 to 300 psi, it's really difficult to get an exact read on the range from 0 to 100 psi, which is really all you need to set the low pressure regulator. It's cool knowing that it's at 75, but if you want to get a little bit higher to like 80, where really should be, and actually for this marker specifically, it should be in a range of 55 to 65. So it's just really difficult to get it set to the right pressure with these smaller valves or gauges. So I'm going to be using a tuning gauge here that will replace that with just for testing purposes. But that's pretty much it. More in the next videos. What's up, guys? So we're going to start off with bag number 1. This is going to pertain to the bolt O-rings. So this one, first thing that I always recommend doing, you're going to grab a microfiber cloth. I always forget to mention that you need one of these. You're going to want to grab your microfiber cloth and just give it a nice cleaning on the outside. This one's already in really nice shape. But once it's clean, you just want to pop the O-rings off. And just like on all the other guns, we're just going to get in the O-ring grooves with the microfiber and just give it a nice cleaning, make sure that it's brand spanking new looking. So Just give it a nice deep clean. And this is going to be one of the easier parts to just rebuild. We're just going to replace those O-rings. So the bag number 1 comes with 4 of them. So direct replacement. Get out of there. And just like always, you're just going to fit them right into the grooves and they'll snap in. And voila, bolts rebuilt. I'm going to set that off to the side. All right, bag number 2. We're going after the low pressure regulator in this video. So there's a few different O-rings inside of the kit here. I'm going to set bag 2 off to the side. To get the low pressure regulator off of the marker, you might have seen me use the Gorilla Grip tape around the reg and just wrenching on the flats. Since this is a custom anodized marker, I'm not going to deal with this, and this is also going to be for speed. I'm just going to use my 3D printed tool for taking it off. And basically what it is just like a glorified socket wrench. So just going to take that off. Usually these come nice and looby. And it even looks like the original one was just way too big for this. You could see it's pretty torn up. So I'm even wondering if this was having some overpressurizing issues from the get-go. So first things first, I'd just like to clean up the threads and basically the whole bottom part with the microfiber. Just make sure it's nice and clean. You can even see that's disgusting. First thing we're going to do is, wow, this is really bad. We're just going to pop that bottom O-ring off. We're going to replace that. That's going to be the first one. I'm just going to get inside of the O-ring grooves here. Get that back in the game. I was going to pop off that top O-ring. And as we're going into the kit, those 2 O-rings are basically going to be the 2 biggest ones. The first one being a 020 O-ring, and that's going to be the one that's closest to the middle of the low pressure regulator. And then the second O-ring that we're going to grab is the really thick one. And this is a 114 O-ring 70 durometer, and just pop that back on, and that goes on the lower part of it. Next up on here, we're going to just twist the 2 halves apart from each other. So that just pops right off. Again, like to give everything a little cleaning. Set the LPR cap off to the side. First thing that we're going to do here is just turn the low pressure regulator upside down. Tap, give it a little tap, and then your adjuster plate right here, we're just going to wipe that down. And then the main spring. Actually, I'm going to set the solenoid and the detents off to the side. One thing that I see a lot, which I never really understood, is people like to lubricate the springs. And that really does nothing for you. So the only part that I really recommend lubricating is going to be your LPR piston. And we're going to grab that using the needle nose pliers. Just pops right out. And for this, we're just going to give that a nice wipe down. And for this low pressure regulator piston, just going to take these O-rings off. These are the 2011 70 durometer O-rings that are in the bag. What I really tried to do for you guys was do these rebuild videos in order of the largest O-rings to the smallest O-rings. That way you don't have to guess as hard to figure out which O-ring is the right size. But it always helps if you have a chart. Maybe I should include one. Got to figure out how to do that. So yeah, you're just going to go down to the next largest O-rings in the bag, and there's 2 of them. I'm just going to replace those. We're not going to lubricate these. We're not going to lubricate these yet. I'm just going to set that to the side for now. The last piece that we're going to be fishing out of the low pressure regulator body is that Schrader valve. And in order to get to that, we're going to use the flathead screwdriver. And you'll see there's like a notch in there that you could just kind of twist it out using. Ooh. This one seems to have some thread lock in it. I'm going to cut the video and get that out off camera. I'm probably going to use a little bit of heat. This is kind of like the old Yeller scene where I tell you guys to look away. But I'm going to cut the video and then we'll go back to it once the Schrader valve is out, and I'll show you how to replace or rebuild the Schrader valve. So more soon. All right, guys. So it was just really in there. So finally got it out. Undamaged too. Once your Schrader valve unscrews, it's going to come out in a few different pieces. We're just going to set the whole assembly off to the side real quick. First thing I like to do, of course, is just give it a really nice cleaning with a microfiber. So we're just going to get the microfiber cloth in there on the inner bore so that it's brand spanking new on the inside. Cool. Beautiful. So we're going to set the low pressure body off to the side. The Schrader valve comes apart in basically three pieces. You have first the Schrader valve pin. You have the Schrader valve seal, which we're actually going to throw that out and replace it with the one in the kit. And then the last piece is the Schrader valve nut. And I just like to use a O-ring pick to get the Schrader valve nut O-ring off. And of course, we're going to just give it a little clean. And then you're just going to use the next largest O-ring. It's a 010 70 durometer Buna O-ring. Just kind of weasel that on down to the bottom of the threads. And then the last O-ring in here is actually the Schrader valve reg seal. And we're going to put that on top of the pin. Just give the pin a quick wipe down. So the order of operations for getting this thing back together is you have your Schrader valve pin, you have the Schrader valve seal, and then the Schrader valve nut goes on top of it, so it looks exactly like that. And then once you have that all together, I'm going to grab the body, and we're just going to drop that in there. And once it's seated, just screw it right back in the same way it came out. So reasons why this could have been a little bit stuck the first time I tried getting it off is because either there's some thread lock on it. Other option is the O-ring over time could have just deteriorated on the brass nut, just kind of gotten lodged with other dirt and grease and debris. One other thing I'm just going to do real quick. Just going to clean that lube out of there just because I'm pretty anal. Cool. So that's in there. Next part to go in is going to be the piston. We're just going to take a small bit of Dow 55 and just get it on those two O-rings. It'll show you how much you want to look like or how much lube you actually want to use. You really just want to coat the O-rings and make sure that there's just a thin layer in between them. So just like this. And then once you have it lubed, you're going to want to put it in flat side down so that this piece is facing upwards. Just press that all the way in there. You're going to chase that with the regulator mainspring, and then the adjuster plate goes in last. Get out of here. And you just want to give it a few quick just kind of pushes to make sure that you feel spring action. Then pull that, screw that back on. One thing that you're going to want to do here, just to make sure that it's set to 0 psi, is just make sure that a few threads on the LPR screw are showing. And this is now set to 0 psi and rebuilt. All right, cool. So this video is going to cover how to rebuild the high pressure regulator, which uses bag number 3. This is going to be a few parts within it. I actually forgot to mention a few things with the low pressure regulator. Last thing that we want to do is just clean up the inside of the front block with the microfiber cloth. And then from there, we can screw the low pressure regulator back onto the front block. Just hand tight is good. So what you might run into with a lot of the Gen 4s is that it's really difficult to find a macro line fitting small enough to fit between the regulator and the trigger guard. So to get the regulator off of this, we're going to be using a few Allen keys. I think it's a 564 for the 2 grip screws. And once we have those off, going to set this off to the side. Next is a 3/32 Allen key to get the clamshell panel off. Nice and clammy. All right, and that'll just pull right off. This one's nice. This is a good build. This has a sci-fi board inside of it. We're going to end up taking the board out anyway, and it just makes it a little bit easier to get the button pad out. So I'm going to just slide that out and push off to the side. On a more stock Intimidator, or at least an older one that has an older board in it, it'll have the membrane pad, which will be attached to the rest of the marker, just like you saw in the Gen 3 video. We're going to use that same 3/32 Allen key to take off the trigger guard. It's just this screw and that screw right there. And this is basically just going to give us the clearance to get the high pressure regulator off. This one's being a little testy. It's a custom, oh, I see why. Customer has a little piece of adhesive right here so that the trigger screw doesn't actually make contact with the metal. Cool. So that's off. I'm going to cut the video here because from here I'm going to splice in the video for how to rebuild a torpedo regulator, and then we'll keep rebuilding the 360 reg as a separate video. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so this is going to be a video on how to rebuild a Bob Long 360 regulator. This is actually a really simple regulator to rebuild. It's a really nice design. First things first, you got to unscrew it from the marker. And I'm going to set the entire marker off to the side. Regulator basically breaks down into 2 parts. You have the top half and the bottom half. And like I said, they just unscrew from each other. There's a few O-rings that you're going to need to rebuild it. There's one O-ring inside of the lower half, and then really there's 2 other O-rings. There's a 0.15 right here on the base of the threads, and then I believe it's a 0.16. Sorry, I stand corrected, a 0.17 that goes on the base right there. So first thing we're going to do is just replace that 0.17. And that just goes right back into place. What we're going to do on the top half is just clean around this area, just because it tends to accumulate lube and dirt. And don't want that going into the Schrader valve and cutting the seal inside of it. The one thing that I recommend doing, which we'll use my gauge kit to do, is just measure the pressure. And what we're going to do is start by setting it to 0 psi. And in doing so, we'll be able to see if there's any regulator creep happening. And the way that you'll know that's happening is if the second that you air it up, the pressure just jumps to like whatever your tank pressure is outputting. Okay, so we got that. We're going to replace the 0.15 at the base of the threads. And that's pretty much it for the top half. To do the bottom half, we're going to use the needle nose pliers to just grab the piston that has an O-ring on it. And then we're going to tap this. This is basically your spring stack. Once we have that out, we're going to use a 1/8 Allen key just to unscrew the velocity adjustment screw all the way. And we're going to run a microfiber through the inner bore of this. Just make sure it's nice and clean. Cool. Set that off to the side. First part that we're going to also give a cleaning to is the spring stack. So this is another part that I often see that people like to either oil or put some grease on. The spring stack really needs no lubricant. So the first thing we're going to do, this is a 0.11 O-ring. These rarely need replacement. Like if it's visibly cracked or torn, that's really the only time I would replace it. In total, there are 8 shims, and they start, well, I'll go through the order of them once they're cleaned. That's the first thing that we're going to do here. Let's give this guy a good cleaning. Cool. And then we're just going to go in the exact reverse order. So you'll notice that with these shims, they are kind of concave. So we're going to do the concave end facing down for the first one, and then they just alternate from there. So the next one will be facing up. And again, we're just going to give these a cleaning with the microfiber cloth. Nothing fancy, just nice and clean. My hands are going to be disgusting after this. It's part of the job, right? It ain't much, but it's honest work. So just keep alternating the shim direction. You can pretty much just put them in the same way that they came out. Whatever is easier. A lot of gross crap on these. All right. So once they're all back on there, the 0.11 O-ring goes back on, and you'll notice too that they kind of make a pattern. So that's good to go. You could just drop that back in. The metal side where it looks like there's a little recess for the screw to go into, that's going to go down. So O-ring side up. And then the last piece that we're going to rebuild here is going to be the piston. And this is just going to take a cleaning. And this is actually a 0.16 O-ring that we're going to replace. Everything gets a cleaning. And then we're going to lubricate this O-ring with Dow 55. If you don't have Dow 55, Dow 33 will still work great. Again, just a nice thin coat. And so that it looks like this. And then from there, don't drop that. Just going to toss this back in. The part with the middle stub is going to go up. So it goes in just like that. Push that bad boy down. And then screw the two halves together. This thing's rebuilt. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to bring the gun back into the picture. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to throw this on the pressure tester. Then we're going to bring the gun back into the picture. And just going to screw the tank in so that we have this. Now, each of the different generations of Intimidators take a different input pressure from the high pressure regulator that we're going to set to. So for a Generation 1 and Generation 2 Intimidator, if you're using this reg on one of those or any reg, I recommend a pressure of 240 psi as a starting point. For a Generation 3, I recommend a starting point of about 200 psi. And for Generation 4, I also recommend a starting pressure of about 200 psi. So first thing we're going to do is just replace that, or turn that on. We're going to figure out which oh, that's the macroline fitting. This one's got a special one on there. Probably just need some Loctite on the threads. All right, in any case, to set the pressure for this thing, we're going to use the 1/8 Allen key to adjust it to 200 psi for this marker. It's really easy to do. I screw this in all the way. All right, guys, so next step here is we're going to reset the pressure for the high pressure regulator. Some quick notes: if you're using this on a Generation 1 through Generation 4 Intimidator, there's some variations in the starting pressures that you'll want to use this or set this at. So for Generation 1 and 2, you'll want to set it to about 230 to 240 psi. Anywhere in between those ranges is fine. For a Generation 3 and Generation 4 Intimidator, you'll just want to set it to about 200 psi. So in order to do that, we're just going to, obviously we have the pressure tester screwed in. We're going to turn the air on this. Looks like this needs some Loctite around the fitting. And then we're just going to adjust this up to 200 psi. And then I always just recommend, if you're using my tester, just press the button on the back and just make sure that it resets at 200 psi. And we're in good shape. That's it. All right, guys, so we're going to get into bag 4 now. This is for getting or rebuilding the front block. So in order to get that out, we basically need to take all the guts out of the frame. So that's basically all of your electronics and then taking the frame off itself. So in order to do that, we're going to need a few parts. We're going to skip one of the steps because usually these markers have a Phillips head screwdriver, just like in the Gen 3 video. This marker came without one. So in order to get that out, that's just a Phillips head screwdriver that we would use. So we're just going to pretend we take that out. That's out. And then just a 1/16 Allen key to take out the bottom screw. And actually, let's take out the battery too. Let's do that first. I always like to be extra gentle with the battery wire just because you don't know what kind of shape the harness is in. Sometimes it's just hanging on by a thread. So we're going to use a 1/16 Allen key to get this screw out. Set that screw to the side. The next thing that I do is I just like to very lightly pull the board up. And the first thing that we're going to do on the other side of this right here is your eye wiring. And I just like to pinch the eye wires right at the base and just gently just pulled it out. You have one other wire here that's going to be holding it in. For older boards that don't have a push button like the Sci-Fi does, you'll have your membrane pad dangling out here, so just remember to take that out. But if you look down here, you have your solenoid wire, which you'll just want to lightly pull on. That'll separate it. Board is out. Set that off to the side. And now we basically have a few other parts exposed. We have the solenoid. We have the eye wires. We're actually going to put the trigger guard back in because it doesn't need to stay out, and I just like to keep things organized. Again, that's just these two screws. Once you have the board out, it's actually easiest if you take the frame off. So most of the time it's just a 1/8 Allen key. This one looks to have some irregular screws in here. Just going to put these off to the side. All right. And frame will come off just like that. The next thing we're going to do is take off the solenoid hose, and this you could literally just yank off. No worries about pulling too hard. We're next going to use a 5/64 Allen key on the eye covers. And just like we did on the Generation 3s, we just want to make sure that the detents are clean and in good shape. These ones are a little bit dirty, and the detents are a little bit bent, as you can see. And this happens, you can notice that they're pushed a little bit forward. That happens when the marker is stored with the bolt sitting in the forward position. Then you combine that with paint left on the detents, and it actually softens up the rubber, which kind of keeps it staying there. So I'm probably going to recommend to this customer that we replace the detents. They also look a little bit short. So that's just side one, and then eyes are coming out with it. Just give that a nice little rub down. Same deal on the other side. And the other part of the eyes should come out. We're just going to leave those off to the side and clean the eye covers. Just give the body a nice cleaning. I'm actually going to use this as an opportunity to Q-tip the body a little bit. So I usually just take a Q-tip and run them through each of the eye holes, and then also through the detent holes. So those are nice and clean. Cool. And now we can hit the grand finale, which is going to be taking out the front block. So front block is accessed via this set screw right here. Just gonna unscrew that screw. Usually once you unscrew it to a certain point, you could just kind of move the front block off to the side so that the barb's out of the way. And you now have access to the O-rings here. Again, just give them a nice little wipe down. I'm just going to take these guys off. These O-rings are definitely the wrong durometer. They feel a little bit harder than they should. So good thing we're rebuilding this thing. We're going to get the right O-rings on here. These are just two 0.15 70 durometer O-rings. Ones I just took off felt like 90s. The durometer just means that it's a little bit harder. So this is rebuilt. We're going to go on to the next part, which is the barb plate. All right, guys, so next part is going to be a pretty quick video. This is for removing the barb plate, and then we're also going to remove this front barb as well. These just remove with the 5/64 Allen key. There's 4 of those screws. And this video is going to align to bag number 5. And the reason why it's so simple is there's only one O-ring. It's a 006 70 durometer O-ring. So just undo these 4 screws. And when you do, this whole assembly is going to come off. And the O-ring that we're going to replace is actually right here. So you could actually use your O-ring pick to fish it out. It's just going to pop right out. And then I'm going to take bag number 5, grab that O-ring. That O-ring's just going to pop in there. Going to set this whole assembly off to the side. And then for grabbing this O-ring, this one actually has a funky barb that is not stock. I just recommend, you can't really grab it with the socket wrench. So I just recommend using a needle nose plier, just grabbing the flats. And if you do it right and carefully, you'll be able to unscrew this barb in really small turns to the point where you can do it by hand. And then it becomes a lot easier. The key here is just to pay very close attention and not scratch my customer's beautiful marker. A lot of pressure here. Okay, so barb is out. On to the next part, which is going to be the ram sleeve. All right, guys, almost at the end. We have 2 parts, or bags rather, that we're going to replace O-rings from. This video is going to cover bag number 6, and then we'll do bag number 7 after. In order to use bag number 6, we need to take the ram sleeve out. So we're going to use a 3/16 Allen key on this screw right here, and just unscrew that. Set that off to the side. And then ram sleeve's just going to slide right out. We're just going to want to clean the exterior of it, the microfiber cloth. Get this bad boy back into good shape. So this is actually a good opportunity to use the 3/8 socket wrench to get this off. To get to bag number 6 is going to be for rebuilding the poppet on here. So in order to get to that, we're actually just going to use the socket wrench on the cap. Ooh, I need to use the other. Sheesh. Okay, so when you ever are dealing with something tight, you need to get some leverage. I love Gorilla Grip gloves. All my tradesmen know what I'm talking about. This will just give us the extra grip that we need to get this thing off. Whew, that thing was on there. Okay. So this happens more than we think. So once you have that completely screwed off, we're also going to check it just to make sure that it's intact, which it is, luckily. These rocket caps, they're called, actually break pretty easily. So poppets right here. We're just going to first give it a nice quick clean. And this is going to be a pretty easy rebuild. There's 3 parts on here, or 3 O-rings rather, 3 different sizes. There's 2 010s at the head, and then a 06 right there. Just kind of squeeze them and they pop right off. You can take the spring off if you want. Just remember to put it back on. Just clean inside of the O-ring grooves real quick. Take the O-rings off. And again, there's only 2 O-ring sizes. The head of the poppet takes the same size for both of them, and then 006 at the bottom. So we're just going to take bag number 6. Let's dump them all out. So number 1 is going to be the top one. And then I like to slip this one on through the bottom. Now, important thing with these markers, specifically the generation, or actually only the generation 4, this doesn't have a great poppet design. And the reason why is because the solenoid was actually meant to operate at a pressure of usually between 65 to about 85 psi. And if you were to run the low pressure regulator on this gun at that range, you really risk blowing this O-ring off of the poppet. So as a result, you really need to run the low pressure regulator between 55 to 65 psi. So poppet's rebuilt. We're going to set that off to the side, and in the next video we're going to rebuild the ram sleeve and then the ram itself. What's up, guys? So we're going to rebuild the ram sleeve and the ram. In order to do that, we're going to first start by replacing this front O-ring. That's just a standard 112 70 durometer O-ring, and this is aligning to bag number 7. Actually, let's just clean the O-ring groove there real quick. I usually don't lubricate this O-ring on the way back in. Never really seen a need to. From here, I'm going to pop the ram sleeve open. I have to bust out the Gorilla Grip again. Let's take the ring off. Don't tell my wife. I need to use 2 Gorilla Grips. Sheesh. There we go. The reason why is because that O-ring is a bit dirty. So Bag number 7 is going to have a few more parts. We got a 016 in here, which is just going to replace this top O-ring. Actually, we're going to clean that too. And then a second 016 O-ring for that second groove. So now the actual ram sleeve itself is rebuilt, and if you tap that out, ram's going to come right out. Before we attack the ram, or rebuild it, it's a little aggressive, we're just going to run a microfiber through the bore of the ram sleeve. And again, this is part of the secret sauce. I just like to get it in there until it's covered, and then just use the O-ring pick to guide it kind of all the way. And from there, get that bad boy nice and clean. Beautiful. We're also going to run some Q-tips through the front. Again, I like to do 2. And in doing so, you will make sure that this thing looks brand freaking new. Yeah, that thing needed it. Let's just do the other side of the Q-tips for good measure. And then just get the front. You can see yourself in there. Beautiful. Throw that out. We're going to clean this up next, so again, just use a microfiber. Don't forget to get the slot where the ram or the bolt pin sits. And then the last 2 O-rings in this are a 011 for the rear. So the rear uses the bigger O-ring. Just get in that groove. And then this front one is a 006. It's easiest if you get that out with an O-ring pick. And again, just like all the generations, you do just want to give this a visual inspection to make sure that the tip of it isn't bent, which it is not. So the bigger one goes in the back, smaller in the front. And then just going to do a light little schmear of grease on both. No need to do lube all over the ram. I see that a lot. Again, all it does is attract dirt. So just a light, thin coat for both the O-rings. We're going to put it back into the ram sleeve. We're going to toss the back cap back on. And then for the poppet itself, I just like to throw a little bit of grease on the rear O-ring. Don't use lube on this O-ring or that O-ring. So basically the 2 front ones do not grease. We're going to put that back in, and then we're going to screw this on, the rocket cap on hand tight. From here, this just slides right back in. Go very gentle so that we don't cut the front ram sleeve O-ring. And we're just going to secure that back in with the larger of the 2 screws. Same way it came out. And once that's in there, we're going to get this reassembled from the barbs to the front block. So more in the next video. All right, guys, so we have most of the top half of the marker reassembled. We're going to take this all the way. So next part that we're going to reinstall is going to be the front block. That's just going to slide right in. And we're going to use the smaller of the two set screws to secure that down. Keep that. So just make sure that's all the way in. And then use the set screw to just kind of guide itself into place. Lock it down. Cool. From here, we're just going to reinstall the front barb. So what I like to do is just thread it in by hand to get it started. And it's actually easiest to thread it in by hand. Then once it starts getting tight towards the end, we're going to use the needle nose pliers to bring it all the way so it seals up. Tighter with these smaller barbs. So I'm just going to go straight for the needle nose. Just going to do this very delicately. Do not want to scratch anything. Sometimes I think to myself while I'm filming these videos, like, do I have a good voice for this? Could this be an ASMR video? Okay, so this is starting to feel a little bit tight. The big thing to note with these barbs is that they're just made out of brass. It's a soft metal, so you don't need to like really torque on it. Okay, that's good to go. Barb is going to face the forward position, so just like that. Get a close-up of that. So barb is facing that way. We're going to use a 5/64 Allen key to tighten these screws. And I always like to screw these in kind of diagonal from each other, because in doing so, just kind of allows it to seat itself nicely. Whoop. So I don't know if any of you caught that. When I pulled this up from right over here, the O-ring actually fell out. And I didn't even realize. I'm glad that we caught it now. Would have been embarrassing later in the video when we air this thing up. Yep, I was right. Let's pop that guy back in there. You can laugh at me in the comments if you caught me doing that the first time. This one's a little tricky. With a new O-ring here, it might just be easier to kind of seat it from above. There we go. Oh, completely messed up. All right, let's try this again. I think I'm proving myself to be a one-star PB Tech right now. Oh my God. Okay, now we're back in business. I'm just going to screw these in. Doop, doop, doop. And with these screws too, you don't want to really torque on the heads once they're down. Just hand tight. Because if you torque on the heads too much, you'll crack the head off. And then you got a strip screw inside of there that it's going to be pretty dang tough to get out of there. Okay. Now we're back in business. We're going to reattach the solenoid. So important to note here, this is going to be the direct orientation of the solenoid. So this front one is just going to go on the front barb. The top one is going to go to the middle barb. So by the top one, I'm talking about the top barb on this guy. And then the bottom barb is going to go to the rear. So it's going to look like this. From here, eyes are going to go back in. So just throw those back into the hole. And again, you kind of want to make this like L shape with it. And use that as the means for determining which eye goes into which eye hole. And as you do each one, I just find that it's easiest to throw the eye covers back in. Cool. Two more things that we're going to do while we're here. Let's just throw the bolt back in. Again, I actually most of the time run the bolt dry. You can use Planet Eclipse gun oil on the bolt O-rings, but I usually just run them dry. And then the second thing that we're going to do is just throw the regulator back on. And that way we don't run into the trigger guard problem that we were having before. Cool. So top half of the marker is reassembled. In the next video, we're going to reassemble the whole thing and air it up and reset the low pressure regulator. So more in the next video. All right, guys, so now that the top half has been fully assembled, we're going to do the bottom half, which is basically your frame and the electronics. So first thing that we're going to do is attach the frame. One thing that we want to do to kind of prep things first, make sure that your high pressure reg is on there so we don't have any trouble with the high pressure regulator not being able to go onto the marker because the trigger guard is in the way. The first thing that we want to do is just kind of shimmy the top barb right here, hose, which goes to the middle barb, off to the left of the ram sleeve channel or the driver side. That way you can get the top of the solenoid sitting directly on top of the actual ram sleeve. And we're just going to line up the trigger frame to the body. Makes things a lot easier if you just get that rear screw in hand tight. And then get that front screw in there. Okay, get the macro line in there next. And what we'll do once the marker's fully assembled is we're just going to unscrew the frame screws slightly once the clamshell parts are together. And then we'll just reseat it and make sure that it's on there nice and snug. So the next piece that we're going to get on here is the board. There's one thing to keep in mind with the board, which is just making sure that the solenoid is in the right position. If it's not, you're not going to be able to set the board in the right position. So to know if the solenoid's in the right position, you're just going to kind of move it, and it should make like a click sound. Once it's in place, there's a metal tab here and then also on the side. You just want to make sure that the solenoid is in that spot. You may have to do it just kind of on the fly. So the first part of the board that we're going to connect is the I wire, which is the top port. So once that's clicked in there, we're going to do the solenoid wire next. Solenoid wire should come next also if you have an older board that has the membrane pad, because once that is connected, speak English, the membrane pad will go right into its slot next. So again, we're going to just kind of shimmy the solenoid into its correct spot. The board will follow, and sometimes it takes a couple tries. This usually is only an issue if the front barb hose is cut a little bit short, which this one is. There we go. I just want to make sure that the trigger makes contact with the switch. Again, there's two board screws here. This one only has the bottom one, which you could screw in with a 1/16 Allen key. Once that is in there, this is all set. The second board screw would go in the top hole of these two. And these are going to exist on any board just because they line up with the micro switch holes. So that's in there. Next piece is the button pad. You could see here that this wire is just kind of hanging out in the spot, so you just want to push that into the frame. And that way it doesn't give you any trouble. Get the button pad nice and in there. What's in my way? There we go. Okay. Makes contact with all the buttons. Battery is next. And let's just turn the board on and make sure that eyes work. We're in good shape. Let's turn that off. Lastly, we're going to screw on the clamshell, so just get the hose into a good position. And once it is, I just like to do the diagonal screw pattern. So bottom right, top left. Get those screwed on. From here, I'm just going to unscrew the frame screws slightly just to kind of realign the frame with the body. Make sure that everything's on straight. Get the grips on. There we go. All right, this thing's fully assembled. What we're going to do from here is take the gauge off because we want to put my tuning gauge on so that we could set a precise pressure. Actually, that was already unscrewed kind of hand tight. I want to show off one of my tools. This is just a handy dandy gauge wrench. This thing's old. It's a old Smart Parts wrench. And I love using this thing because it just helps me not scratch your gauges up. So let's screw this one on. One thing about the low pressure regulator that we just want to make sure of, because that's the last thing that we're going to do, we're just going to reset the low pressure regulator. We just want to make sure that a few threads are showing, and that's just going to ensure that the low pressure reg is set to 0 psi. Zeroed out. I'm going to put my silencer on. I'm going to air this thing up. And always make sure that the low pressure reg, when we're setting it the first time, is just set to that 0 pressure setting. Airs up really nice. All right. And for the low pressure regulator, we just want to make sure that it doesn't go above 65 psi. So just gonna turn the eyes off. So I usually just set it to about 60 psi. There we go. This guy is in the game. So thank you guys for watching. Hope this helps you rebuild your Generation 4. And again, you could purchase solenoids, detents, full O-ring rebuild kits, everything that you saw in this video for sale on 5starpbtech.com. Thanks again.